You can have a Netflix, but if Netflix is empty, it's freaking useless, right? You need to have really good content because that's what you come back for.
That is such an important part of embedding change and embedding trainings and skills, because you can't train everything and every possibility.
The platform globally handles more healthcare professionals, about 500,000 across the globe, in terms of accounts created on Academy for the last 4 years.
Thank you for joining, both Eduardo and Susannah and everybody who's listening to us. I'm very happy to welcome you today. So we have a very good crowd to discuss about education within the companies and with the HCPs outside of the companies. First, Susannah. Susannah is a global commercial operations leader with responsibilities including commercial capabilities at Mundipharma. And Mundipharma is a mid-sized pharmaceutical company who has undergone a strong digital transformation over the past few years, both in terms of technical capability, skill set, and mindset. And having known Susannah for a few years, I'm really always impressed by how she can focus us on the things that can really trigger change instead of simply doing the shiny things that people do. So she also does shiny things, but only the ones that actually trigger an actual change. And Eduardo is a digital education leader with a global role at Medtronic, where he's been transforming how healthcare professionals engage with medical education. He's supporting over 18 business units across EMEA with his team. He's driven the development and rollout of Medtronic Academy 2.0. So we'll discuss about that in a few seconds. And the platform actually helped Medtronic reach almost 200K, so 200,000 HCPs in EMEA. So I'm very curious to understand how they did that. And that actually also helped turn the education in a strategic growth driver for the company. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you, David.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
And I'd cut directly to the questions. First, Eduardo, tell us a bit about this Medtronic Academy 2.0. So, I mean, 200,000 HCPs, usually websites for pharma reach 50 HCP, 100 HCP. Here we add 3 zeros. So tell us a bit about what it is and how you were able to stand out with it.
Yeah, so just first and foremost, there's no one kind of man band here. This is a whole team, a whole organization behind this. The history of Academy is a multi-year history to begin with. Now, it started in one operating unit, and about 4 years ago, we kind of made a decision to come together. We had our platform here in EMEA. Other regions had different platforms. We said, okay, let's have one global platform for everybody. Let's join forces. Let's kind of commit to this as an organization, and then build upon that. So that's how this started about 4 years ago with Academy 2.0, really collaborating with our colleagues in the Americas, with our colleagues in APAC, and in EMEA, because we were kind of we are in some ways privileged to be able to move faster than perhaps other regions and so on. We use Agile. We really believe in Agile implementation. So we were able to go out first, but then the other regions were able to follow after. And we just, again, it is a global platform. So indeed, 100, to be exact, David, is about 200,000, 176,000 here in EMEA only, but the platform globally handles more healthcare professionals, about 500,000 across the globe, in terms of accounts created on Academy since for the last 4 years. The reason that the volumes are perhaps higher than other areas is because we're supporting all of the 18 operating units of Medtronic. Each operating unit, think of it as a business servicing a certain part of the market, with its own product portfolio, with its own sales force, with its own marketing teams, et cetera, et cetera. So each of those 18 are focusing on different areas of the market. We are underneath all of the 18. We are supporting all of the 18. It would be stupid to actually build 18 platforms, right? So we have one global platform for all that supports all of these 18. So the amount of effort, to do that is substantial, but we are now in that position. So by doing that, at a global level. By doing that across all operating units, you get those kind of numbers, David.
And how did you actually bring people to the platform? Because even if you have one big platform, let's say you're present, I don't know, in 150 countries, that still makes thousands of people trying to reaching out and creating accounts in each of these countries. So how do you actually drive people, motivate people, besides just saying, hey, cool, we have good educational video, because everybody says that?
Yes. However, let's be clear. Academy isn't just a kind of a platform of all types of education. Academy is specifically here to provide safe and effective use education around the products and therapies of Medtronic. So here's the situation: you have people buying the products, but they're not knowing how to use it. So Academy is there for you, or in some cases, situations where you can't even buy the product until you've actually completed the training, right? So that is most cases it's the former, not the latter, but there are cases where you can't buy the product, right? So there is a motivation to access Academy and the Academy content because it's very hands-on, because it's applicable to what you're going to be doing. In some cases, and this is where we're kind of migrating a little bit from the let's say just purely from the safe and effective use training and education aspect of Academy to a little bit more like the business development. I'm exploring this product or this therapy. Let me learn more. Let me sign up for some of the learning materials. Let me kick the tires. Let me understand how this works, potentially what are the things I need to think about. And then, you know what, I'm convinced. Now I'm going to go in and reach out to the sales team and say, like, can I buy this? Or if I'm in procurement, same story. What kind of materials are available for my organization if we were to purchase this product, right? So it starts to play different roles. It's not just purely an education, like a strict training education angle, which of course that is the foundation of what we do, but it's starting to have applicability in other parts of the business or serve other customer needs beyond just immediately T&E.
And do you have also disease education on the platform, or is it really focused on the product only?
So, if it's disease, condition, therapy, etc., it's all related to our overall product offering. And it's again, we're not a university of all sorts of education. It's specifically to what we offer, and it's specifically to healthcare professionals. So patients are the scope, right? Patients have a different story, the different platform for that. So this is only healthcare professionals. Now, who are healthcare professionals? Surgeons, nurses, cardiologists. I mean, we support over 50 specialties, right? So that's how we that's the scope of what we do. And we do that at the individual level. So the kinds of, when you register on Academy, because you can see what's on offer, but if you want to access it and start to learn, you need to register. And with that registration, then we can track your behavior at the individual level, and then hopefully tailor, the offering. Perhaps the tailoring now is, let's say it's quite young, but the potential to tailor is very, very big in the future. And not only across the platform, but across other touch points of Medtronic as well.
Can I ask a question as well? So how do you drive the registrations apart for the ones where it's not required to do the training?
You know what? That's a great.
I had the same question.
Okay.
It's a great question, right? So first and foremost, the registrations, of course, are free, right? So how do you create awareness? The most valuable channel we have at the moment are our sales organization. Right. So the sales organization is still very much focused on, the business model is very much focused on sales work. So you need to work with each of those 18 operating units to be able to get visibility of the offering. In first place, I can tell you right now, it's not just building the platform. I mean, that's table stakes. You build a platform, but how do you actually get the operating units to start to host their content on the platform, start to promote the content on the platform, start to drive awareness, and we do that together with them because they have the relationship with the marketplace. Remember, they are the ones who have the product, the offering, the understanding of that specific marketplace. So we do that together with them. But mostly the operating units, digital marketing activities, we support certain things. There are new services that we're coming up. So it's not just the platform. There are some services that are being wrapped around the platform. So that's how you do it. It's over time. It's having really good relevant channels to reach out to those relevant audiences, and once they experience it, they come back, right? They don't just come here once, they sign up, and they come back at least 65%, depending on the operating unit, of those customers who register come back 3 times or more in 12 months. Right, so they're coming for the content, and they're coming again and again, and doing other things. Now, this content is not obligatory for them to complete in most cases, but they see it as valuable, so they want to complete it. And content could be webinars as well, by the way, not just courses.
How much content do you have for a specific HCP, let's say, because they come back, but do they watch again the same thing because they forgot how it works and all that? Or do they actually each time come to learn something new and different?
And the answer is always, it depends, right? It depends on the operating unit. So there are operating units, by the way, that require healthcare professionals to recertify on the usage of a particular product. So in those cases, they come again and again for the same training or variations of that training. In other cases, it's more like, hey, there's a new product, and so I want to learn about that, and I kind of learn about it, and then I move on. Depends. It really, each operating unit has its own educational offering, its own target audience, its own content, and you know, so it's not to say like we just do it holistically for everyone the same way. It'd be too generic to say that. You really have to go into the details and work with the operating units, work with the various channels they have, their various initiatives, the congresses, the societies, etc., to drive more awareness of what we have. And also be clear, as I said, you know, David, we're not hosting everything, right? We're just hosting things that are relevant to the Medtronic offering. And that's important and so that complements other people's offerings, other societies' offerings, right? And that have other types of content. So it's important to understand where you play a role and where you don't play a role. What is it that you can support, and where do you bring the value to the marketplace, right? The healthcare professional isn't here to come access content for the sake of it. They're trying to accomplish something. And so we are trying to put that content in front of them when it's relevant, when it's helpful to them, right? It's not because they just come, we have a platform come and they tick. That's not their job.
I love it, but for that you really need to have enough value or type of content to bring. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
companies have content where basically it's 2 pages about each of the drugs, and then a couple of reports or things like that. And they don't have enough content to actually get people to come back and back again. So how would you solve this situation if you would be in a smaller company with less content available?
You know, it's a really, really important question. And the analogy I always, you know, for those on the line, I always talk about is you can have a Netflix, but if Netflix is empty, it's freaking useless, right? You need to have really good content, because that's what you come back for. Now, your point is right to say, David, getting content is really hard. Building content is really hard. So you can do several things. You can either kind of build the content yourself, and in many cases we do, and you do that over time. And I you know, there's part of our organization, you know, that actually support the operating units in adapting content that gets created elsewhere. There's sometimes content that's created from scratch. Most of the times there's adaptation of that, but building the content is foundational. There are faster ways of building content. Webinars, recordings, whatever. I mean, you can create content in faster ways. One of the challenges that we have in the medtech industry is the approval of the content. It's not just the creation of the content, but the approval. And it sounds ridiculous. In a non-regulated industry, you can basically record something and publish it out straight away or near real time. In our case, it's painful, but we're talking about at least weeks in the best case scenario, even months. And it's almost embarrassing to go back to somebody with a recording of an event that happened, you know, 3 or 4 months ago. It's like, well, you might as well not send it, right? Because people forget about it. So those are some of the things that we still need to work through. I'm not saying we're there yet, David, but content is foundational. The people coming for the content, they're not coming because of registration, or they're not coming for the ease of use. They're coming for the content. Ultimately, they have a job to be done. They need to fulfill that. And so we need to be prepared to have the right content for them to complete the things they're trying to do.
You spoke a couple of times about how some teams help the other teams in terms of content creation. Some have different channels and all that. And that goes through internal education. And that's a good link actually to Susannah, who focuses a lot on that. Can you tell us a bit about your approach on internal training and how you avoid what a lot of companies have as, okay, it's a checkbox, I've done my training, and that's it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I like what you said, Eduardo, that if you're like, they go to a site because they want to accomplish something, not just because for the sake of going. And the same is true for training, that it's quite an effort to do training properly. So when you're training to accomplish something, when you're training to change behavior or change the way something's done or improve something, then the approach is a bit broader than just the training. So at content, we also need to get it approved, but because it's internal, we're in a different level than the external. We don't need to get any governments involved or anything like that. So I think, what the way we've approached it is, create the right context. So sort of from a change management playbook, right context, right leadership around, why are we doing this? What's in it for me? What's in it for the customer, the patient? Keep it really simple. So you mentioned at the start, David, we went through in recent years a digital transformation. Different brand teams, different countries have different levels of expertise, but the basic framework, the basic tool for some of the more complex trainings like customer journey planning, content planning are really simple so that everyone can get on board with them. And then if you want to go crazy with it, you can, but we're all speaking at least at a base level the same language. So basic tools that everyone can agree on and we can all be speaking the same language. We deliver them through, I'm sure many of you on the line use Articulate if you're doing training. So, you can create nice e-learnings that can be a bit more engaging than just like, this is the framework. And then for those more complex frameworks, we actually put in place, assignments at the end. You have a quiz, but you have an assignment. So you've got a piece of, you need to actually do this in real life. You need to plan a customer journey. Here's the framework. Go and plan it. Bring us a draft. We put a date in the diary. So it's a little resource intensive, but to your point of external content as well. But we put time in the diary. They can come along with their draft, get some input, get some feedback, and then go away and maybe have a follow-up. So it's really well-supported process. So we can see at the end of it that they have actually done it. So they've got the will, hopefully they've got then the skill, and we've seen them do it. And then embedding follow-up, we have champions. We do periodic reviews of the different KPIs that we want to track to show change. So it's kind of stepping back from just training and seeing that as more of a change management approach.
And I've seen that you're always on top of every step. So you're organizing really, you're checking that people go through the trainings to articulate. You can have the statistics and double checking, okay, why didn't you do it? Is there an issue? Didn't you have time and all that? So it's not I do it and I forget about it. It's really an ongoing process I've seen you go through in order to follow up. And that brings me to the next question. You just mentioned the champions. Can you tell us a bit more about what you did? So I've seen it and I really like the way you did it. So I'd love for people to hear about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's been such a great asset, I think, in the transformation. So I think as well, the size of our company lends itself to having a community, where one person in each country really is stepping up to champion new ways of working or use of new tools. And that is such an important part of embedding change and embedding trainings and skills, because you can't train everything and every possibility. And if you have just one person working in isolation, I don't know, in Australia, they might feel a little alone as well, trying to drive change in their area. So we have, a network of champions who come with lots of energy and ideas, connected, simple on a Teams chat or, with monthly meetings where we can discuss good practice. They ask each other for help directly, not just always coming to the global team. They support each other in terms of motivation with examples of what's working, customer feedback. It's a motivational thing. They don't feel alone. They get support quickly. So I think the impact is massive. Actually was replicated then at field level. So within countries as well, they pick champions within the field team who can then be sort of role models and support their peers. So I think a champions model is a really efficient way of embedding change in all individuals across the business. And we as one of our measurements, we did a sort of periodic survey through the main change period to ask every member of the commercial organization their perception of the external readiness of their customers for the omni-channel approach, as well as our internal readiness. Like, how much do they understand what we're trying to do? How much do they see ways of working changing? So we tracked that over time with the survey with every single member of the commercial business, and could actually see that come through. And I think a big part of that impact was from the champions.
And I've seen as well that you really listen to those champions, well, and the brand managers as well, but to organize these monthly meetings, you also ask them, okay, what are the topics that you're interested in? What do you want to learn about? There's the day-to-day things and the frameworks that you want them to go through, but there are the other things you may not have thought about.
That is a really good point. They become like a steering group, essentially, to make sure that what we're working on is what is actually needed in the business, and vice versa. You know, if we disagree, we can kind of just have a discussion. And we can bring in external speakers like yourself, for example, David, on particular topics. If they're interested, we can bring in external speakers to support them as well. So they become more visible and become like a steering group for the global team as well.
And you mentioned feedbacks and KPIs. So I'm turning back to Eduardo to understand what's success for you. Because, okay, it's great. We have 300,000 HCPs. They've logged in maybe 3 times. Maybe they've logged in 10 seconds, maybe 3 minutes. How do you actually estimate that you were successful or not?
No, yeah, absolutely. So, success, you could have said success is how many have completed a certain training, right? Is that a measure of success? Not necessarily. It depends. Most of these trainings are optional trainings. So they're coming here because they want to actually go and learn about something. If they complete the whole thing or not, well, that's not necessarily a measure of success to complete it. Now, of course, in the cases where a sale of a product is linked to training or dependent on training, then you success is for them to complete the training, because then a sale can happen. But those are exceptional products. That's not the norm. Most products are basically you can buy them and then you can get the training if you want or if you don't. The adoption overall of the platform and the content is what we look at. So are they coming? Are they logging in? Are they consuming content? Are they completing it all? Less so, right? I mean, we do see, I can tell you right now, the average, which was it's much higher now than what it was before. The average is about 53% completion rate across the e-learnings and things like that.
What would be the time needed to do 100%? Just to get an idea, 53% is 1 minute or is an hour?
No. These are hours. These are more. This could be depends. Some of the trainings could be 3 hours. Some of the trainings could be 1 hour. But it's not a micro learning kind of exercise. These are pretty intense trainings, hands-on trainings where you observe. In other cases, by the way, I mean, we're not even talking about the in-person trainings, right? But you have a digital component, then you have an in-person component, then you can follow it up with some more afterwards. So it's a truly blended experience. But I'm talking only at the moment of the digital component or the digital education component, and those are several hours in many cases. Depends on the content, sometimes maybe 20 minutes, but it's a series of them. It's not just kind of watch a video and you're done. It depends, right? It's hard to tell you exactly an average duration because it really depends. But on the e-learning side of things, they tend to be certainly, higher than half an hour, most likely an hour, even longer. And the 53% completion of that is pretty good in those cases where it's not a mandatory training in most cases. So they're doing this as opposed to watching Netflix, right? So that kind of tells you something about the quality of the content.
And if you have 200,000 people taking, let's say, an hour of training, that means through your platform there were 200,000 hours of learning given to the HCPs. Just transform that in cost for sales, if the sales rep would be to do the same training, and you can see, beside anything else, the savings that you've brought.
That's a really, really good observation, David. And indeed, we're starting to get more into that because, and what you're doing, Susannah, and what we're doing, ultimately success is adoption, but the success is also like, okay, how do we then help the organization overall reach certain goals? Commercial goals, non-commercial goals, that's okay. But so we're starting to kind of realize that, we have this treasure trove of data, and we really, what can we do to better provide a better experience to those customers? Well, I can tell you, we collect quite a bit of information on what people, who they work, what are they called, who they work for, what time zone they're in, and all that. But also, actually, what are they completing or not completing? Hey, they enrolled to this thing, but they didn't show up. Okay, so that information is quite valuable. And then we can start to tailor, right? And let's face it, today in Academy, the tailoring capabilities are quite limited, but you can tailor a lot with your sales organization. If your sales organization can understand what customer A is doing and be able to tailor accordingly, then there's an opportunity here, right, to have a more relevant conversation with that customer, right, to be able to give him or her something that they are interested in and not just something that we think we want to sell. Right?
Can you make that connection between the preferences that you see in the training system to the to the sales rep?
We're starting to look into that. So it's early days, but I think one of your topics or one of your themes, David, is around AI, and we see AI playing a really important role. Agents particularly in helping, in supporting the sales organization to have more tailored and relevant conversations. That is, now it's early days, okay, very early days for us, but we're starting to move in that space. And I think because we have the data. If you don't have the data, you don't, and you can't get the data if you don't have the content, right? And et cetera, et cetera. So there is kind of a little bit a bit of a production line here, or you got to think about it in a systematic way. But once you start to get there, you can start doing some pretty interesting things, and we're in that direction. We're not 100% there yet. I can't tell you, hey, how many conversations sales rep, but that's where we see this going, and this is exciting. Again, not just purely from a commercial point of view, but from a customer point of view, to have those more relevant conversations. If the customer has expressed interest in a particular theme and they completed this and watched that, maybe we can recommend something else. Or maybe we say, you know what, you're ready for a face-to-face event. Or maybe we say, look, have you seen this other product or whatever? These conversations are possible and they are relevant. It's not just like, let me tell you what we have and what we want to sell to you, but it's a conversation based on what we have seen you have expressed interest in.
Mm-hmm. And that's as you mentioned, the data and the content are usually the issue, because either most of the people don't have the data because they have a website with 4 pieces of content. What can you say if they've watched 2 of them? Is it because they were the only one or because they just fed on it? It's very few companies have the amount of data and content that allow them to actually do these recommendations. But we'll dig a bit more into AI because you've made a nice transition for me, and I've been told that a webinar nowadays who doesn't speak about AI is not a good webinar. So I have to add questions on that. Maybe Susannah, you can tell me if or how you've used AI to actually improve your work, improve the content, improve the processes and all that.
I do use it every day. I think in probably two ways I want to share is the first one is like efficiency. I work as part of the global commercial team. So translations of kind of formatted, e-learning modules or whatever, that's very easy now. And all I need to do is get someone to check it rather than, a lot of labor intensive work. And also, with videos as well, as if we're recording clips for trainings, for example, if you do it with an AI avatar, that can be edited and translated a lot more easily than trying to get that same person back to do another cut or it's much more flexible. The second way, which we're starting,
you can have better looking people, because I did some of the trainings and I was upgraded by a nicer avatar.
Exactly. No, I'm kidding. So the second way, which I'm quite excited about, is we're starting again for sort of field force training using AI avatars for role plays. So you can brief the AI avatar in the same way you would brief a medical rep, for example, who would be a medical liaison who might be role playing with the rep. You get the brief approved for, to have that conversation, and then the rep can practice in the car or whatever. You can set up different scenarios to give them challenging situations to practice with. And there's a lot of transparency then around it that the manager can then look at what they did, watch it back, give them feedback. So it's almost like the really high cost role play days that you set up when you get everyone together. It's sort of taking it's not as good as that, but it's taking a piece of that, and making it really bite-sized and portable. And yeah, that's something we're just starting, and I'm pretty excited about that as well.
Yeah, role play amazing nowadays. It's the personalized training, because basically every answer from the fake HCP or avatar HCP is adapted to your question. So this is something that's we've seen and super powerful, because you have hyper personalization to the learner.
Exactly. And also if, for example, someone is working on, even in the selling model, they need to be asking better questions, you can brief the avatar to not give up any information unless they're asked really good questions. You can kind of give it a brief to work on skills, knowledge, whatever you want. So yeah, it's really flexible.
And what was the feedback of the sales team who, I don't know if you're in a pilot phase or if you've already used it, but did you get feedbacks from the teams who said, no, I don't need that, or that's awesome, or did they spend 2 minutes on it, or because I could see myself playing during an hour with an avatar like that just to improve and improve and improve. So what was the results you got?
So we've done a more of a static version so far, and that's gone down already really well. So this is where they have a brief and they record a response basically. And we're just rolling out the AI, but everyone who's tried it so far does get a little bit hooked on it. Yeah. I think, we don't have all the time in the world though. So there'll be a point when you'll just say, okay, I'm done, and submit. But just even programming it, you can get really sucked in trying to make it exactly the personality that you want it to be. Yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole potentially, but I mean, I think people are excited to use it. It's non-threatening in the sense that you give the rep the control over what they submit. It's the manager looking at it. It's for the light version we've had really good uptake and really good feedback.
So maybe I didn't get 100%. So what do you mean by static? So you have a list of questions. It's the same questions for everybody. The answer is being recorded, I assume. And
yeah, the static version. Sorry, it's a brief. So for example, a healthcare professional has walked up to you on a Congress booth. They don't know anything about the product. In 90 seconds, give them a brief and video yourself. So it's very much more AI is not involved. The AI can be involved in then giving them initial feedback. So before they submit, they can look at their pace. They can look at whether they've covered the main points. It can pick out certain obvious things. But then the next step is, that two-way interaction where they can be challenged. They can ask questions. That's the next step, which we haven't fully rolled out yet. So yeah, no feedback yet on the second step, but I'm very optimistic.
No, if the first step is already being used, that shows the potential of further personalized learning and all that. And it's interesting that with that, you can also give it back to the managers, because we should not forget the human part, especially in sales. Yeah. It's not about checking boxes. There are things that we are not yet able to get through AI, maybe in a year or two, I don't know. But it's always interesting to have this human version. So if you standardize it, you can really even continue the learning for the team. And
what I like about that example, Susannah, is that, and I've done for myself kind of rehearsal of certain things. So I upload something into ChatGPT and I have just a conversation with it, and they tell me, hey, how was this answer? And they would kind of give me a feedback on the answer, and then kind of perhaps provide some suggestions on how I can improve the answer. Frankly speaking, I wouldn't have that from my manager or whatever. So having the opportunity to rehearse, to practice with somebody and get some feedback, I think is very powerful. And I can imagine from a sales perspective, I mean, yeah, that's fantastic, right? So yeah.
I love sorry, go ahead, Susannah.
No, I'm just agreeing. It's a great opportunity for the field force. Absolutely. If somebody in the field force wants to learn, it's another way that they can do that.
Yeah. I love to work with the characters of the AI. So when I do exercise, like you mentioned, Eduardo, asking for feedback, I ask sometimes for feedback. Okay, imagine you are, I don't know, brand manager. Now imagine you're an omnichannel manager. Now imagine you're a very annoying, challenging, data-oriented person.
Yeah, you have different personas that you're presenting to, right?
Yeah.
To get the feedback relevant to that audience.
Yeah, the most annoying one is when I say
programmed one of those.
And Eduardo, what AI solutions or what AI tools did you use for the Academy 2.0, or if any?
So in Academy, there aren't AI tools just yet in Academy, but we're looking at some technologies to leverage the data that we have from Academy for the an assistive agent for the sales rep. So things that we're looking into data cloud, we're looking into Agent Force, Salesforce Agent Force. So these are technologies to not only bring the data, but to actually be able to help the sales rep query that data in a much easier way.
Okay, right? So you bring the data into Salesforce or Viva. I don't know which one.
That's the intent, right? So we're not there yet, but that's the intent, to be able to do that, and in fact let the sales rep be able to query that or that the data on the specific customer. I'm going to go meet customer A or customer B. What should I be? What have they been up to, right? What have they been doing on Academy or elsewhere? That's the idea. And again, for the purpose of tailoring that conversation to that individual, not just talking about whatever, but talking to something that's relevant based on what they have expressed interest in.
A cool thing we did with ARIA related to that is a podcast on the past events that happen with a specific HCP. So imagine you're a sales rep, you're in your car, you're driving all the time, and you just interact with your CRM or with Viva, Salesforce or whatever, and say, okay, tell me what I should know about it. And it actually comes in a podcast or in a monologue if you want, but in an audio part, where basically they can even continue asking questions, but they can listen to it during 2 minutes instead of sit in a corner very quickly and all that. So even the format, not only the getting the data, but also how to format it in a friendly way for the person.
Yes. The answer cannot be like 17 pages long. I mean, it has to be something that people can consume. And as you say, I mean, the format's really super important. Sales reps are on the road very often. So, mobile is critical for that. So they need to be able to access these technologies and these capabilities from their mobile phone and be able to kind of do it as they're driving or et cetera, right? It's not like I'm going to be sitting in my office. I mean, they're not in the office. Sales rep is in the field. That's their job. So indeed, that's an important consideration. Understanding, by the way, the realities of that sales rep and catering and designing for that sales rep is very, very important. I'm sure, Susannah, you've done that, or you're doing that with the work that you're doing. Understanding who your audience is, understanding how do we basically target them, how do we support their day-to-day, and how do we add value to what they're doing. That is fundamental, right? It's not just about new technology for the sake of it, David. It has to be technology that is addressing a need, or that audience has, in this case, a sales rep.
Yeah.
How do you actually understand it? So I know, Susannah, for you, it's, let's say, a bit easier because you know most of them personally. But for your 200K HCPs, how do you actually understand what they like before analyzing the data? Because analyzing the data is, I provided them A and they like it or not. How do you know what to produce?
So the two things, 200,000, and you're talking about segments, right? Then there's a different story. I was referring to a moment ago to individuals, literally at the contact level. Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, nurse here, nurse there, right? So you need to analyze that at the individual level so that the person who's going to have that conversation with that individual has the latest information. On the aggregate level, right, in terms of, hey, which learnings are performing better, then this is your traditional kind of analytics, right? And where you can see, look, X number of visitors came, most visitors went to this page, logged in, et cetera, consumed this or didn't consume this. It's at an aggregate level. It's not at the individual level. So there's two kind of levels of data we're looking at.
I get, but my question was a bit more on the aggregate level.
Okay.
Before having the data in your database, how do you actually investigate what could be good learning videos? Or is it only based on, okay, I have this new product, so I do the learning, but how do you know what's their preferred format?
Sorry. Okay, I understand what you mean. No, indeed. So that content itself, right? The content owners have to be designing for that audience. The content owners often sit in the operating units, right? So, and some support from our team, but mostly it's the operating unit who are the experts in that field. They have really direct contact with the marketplace. They understand what the marketplace needs. They understand what KOLs, meaning key opinion leaders, are thinking. They understand the realities of healthcare professionals in the work environment. So that needs to be kind of collected and fed back into the content designers or the content builders. That's how it gets done. And then what they do is that then, of course, you promote it and you find out, is it working or not? A good operating unit will optimize the content accordingly. Others just leave it as is.
Cool, thank you. We are getting to the end of the timing, so I'd have one last question for each of you. What would be one thing that you've seen working that you may not have expected, or that you think could be interesting for the team to hear, and maybe one thing that didn't work, so that people can learn from it and avoid doing the same thing? I know it's a difficult question, especially since I didn't share it with you beforehand, which I should have. So we'll give Susannah a bit more time to think as a lady, and Eduardo, I'll let you start on this one.
Oh, lucky me. So look, in terms of things that have worked, it's not rocket science, David. It's going back to the basics. I mentioned that before. People aren't coming to a platform or whatever or doing certain things just because you tell them. They're coming here because they have a fundamental need that needs to be met. So understanding that fundamental need is critical. If you understand that need and you address it, then you're likely to have success. Content is great, but content that addresses the needs of the customer is even better. So that's the same in marketing, the same in everything. So that works. Maybe switch over to you, Susannah, before I tell you what doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I have got one of each actually. So what worked better than I expected was probably, and I'm not introducing anything new here, but that community building element is really powerful, and I can see the potential for that. Maybe, I don't know, it's probably trickier externally, but in any scenario, if you can build a community, it takes a lot of work, but it pays you back in terms of impact of whatever you're trying to train, whatever behavior you're trying to change. What we've explored, which was maybe didn't work as well as I thought, was involving this. So I talked about AI role playing in the field with customers. So an AI listening in the call, that raised so many different questions that it ended up being a bit of a quagmire in terms of how that actually impacts the discussion that you have, how that impacts, all of the different complications in terms of legal privacy. So I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it ended up being quite a thick soup to then sort of try and get into it once you start to involve the HCP in that sort of, and so basically an AI listening to a dialogue in order to then provide coaching or feedback or collect data and insights. I would be really interested to hear from any company that has made that work, because it seems to be quite a nut to crack, I would say.
That's super interesting. Just a follow-up question on this one, even though I said it was the last one, but was it blocked then internally by the sales rep who asked all these questions and by compliance, or was it blocked by the HCPs who said, I don't want to be listened to by an AI in my meeting?
So I think it was a mixture of the two. We didn't really have the buy-in, I guess, and without the buy-in, you're not gonna get off the ground. So a feeling that the HCPs wouldn't be open to it, despite maybe some evidence to the contrary, but you need to get the buy-in, but also fed in by the level of sort of buy-in internally that it would need as well from the different functions.
Susannah, if I can add to that, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The buy-in is so fundamental in everything you do. You need to kind of build that up front. You need to work with the people who are in kind of in the front line. If you neglect that, David, that definitely doesn't work. That definitely will backfire on you. You need to understand who these people are. You need to engage them, Susannah. You need to have the champions. You need to have all these sort of things that you were mentioning before. That is really important. If you do that correctly, then you have, I would argue, really good success, or a good chance of success.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we won't revisit, but yeah, that's something which was harder than I expected.
I can understand it. Even in our meetings with customers, I hesitate using an AI note taker, because I would imagine that most of the customers would say, no, I'm scared about this or that. Maybe it's a question of time. Will come over time. And you don't agree, Eduardo?
No. I think people might get more comfortable, but you have to explain what's the value. Why would you want to actually, what's in it for me and things like that. I think, again, the technology for the sake of it is not the answer. You need to say, look, this is going to help you do a better job, or there has to be some benefit, right? Yeah. That's important. But and I think, Susannah, as to your point of how do you actually get that engagement, and David, why it's hard, because it's not technology, right? This is not a kind of a technical thing you can just fix. I mean, this is people, right? And you're gonna have to win them over, and you're gonna have to explain, hey, this matters to you, and it's convince, and they change their minds or they push back, and you kind of have to. It takes blood, sweat, and tears, but that's really what works.
And to be, yeah. I could continue speaking with both of you during hours, but I promise it would be the last question 3 questions ago. So I'll use the opportunity to thank you both very much for all the insights, for all your time. And yeah, I wish everybody a very nice evening. It was nice to have a very diverse crowd listening. And yeah, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
David. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks, Bye.